I just compiled GKG kernel earlier.
All right, guys, we should be live. Now, we've had some audio issues here. That's why we're starting late. So you guys that are listening on YouTube, let me know if you can hear my mic. And then I'm going to ask these guys to say good morning. And hopefully you guys will hear them as well. So, guys, say something.
Good morning and good afternoon. How's everyone doing?
Good morning.
All right.
Howdy.
There is an echo. Is the echo probably me? All right, let me see if I can figure this. All right, I changed something here in OBS. I did notice that the desktop audio was not set to mono, so you guys could have been just coming through their left ear instead of both ears. So hopefully that helped. Hear you all. Okay, that's a miracle, because that has not happened in many months, where we started the stream and everybody could actually be heard. Now, before we get started, I will warn you guys, because I haven't told you guys here on camera and those in the YouTube chat, for the last week and a half, I have been sick, and if I have any kind of coughing fits or anything, if I disappear for a few minutes off camera, off microphone, I am just getting over a second bout of COVID.
Yep, totally understand.
So
I'm a long hauler.
So I have been sick. I've been away for about a week and a half. Luckily, I'd had some, I'd actually planned about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I felt kind of tired and burnt out because I'd put in a lot of work on some of the DTOS stuff that I did some videos on about a month ago. I was like, you know what, I'm going to step away for a while. I'm going to do some pre-recording, get a few videos ahead. I'm going to take like a week or two off and just go on vacation. Because I haven't had a vacation since starting this channel 5 years ago. Because I just never take a vacation. I was like, you know what, I'm going to go do something. So there for a couple of weeks, I really busted my ass. And now I got, 5, 6 videos ahead. And I figure I'll space them out every other day for about, 12, 14 days. I get 2 weeks off. And once I got to that point and I was ready to start figuring out where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do for a couple of weeks, the next day, I was sitting at the office and I had this weird feeling like, you know how sometimes women will talk about having hot flashes. And I was like, all of a sudden I just felt really, really warm, like instantly, like burning up all over. And then it went away. And I was like, man, that was weird. I've never felt like that. And then I got home and I realized I hadn't eaten anything since lunch, and it's like 7, 8 o'clock that evening. And I wasn't hungry. I'd kind of lost my appetite. I was like, I'm getting sick. And then the next day, the coughing started, the chills, and it was basically a repeat of what happened to me late last year, back in November or whatever. So COVID again. I was in bed, couldn't move for about 5, 6 days. And then about 3 or 4 days ago, I started getting slowly back into a routine of doing some stuff. I'm still not 100%, still cough all the time, but at least I'm not in bed. So.
Well, hope you're getting over it soon. Hope you're getting well soon.
Yeah, I've made 2 videos here in the last couple of days that haven't been published yet. I tried to make a video, the very first one since getting sick. I spent about a week in bed. I was like, okay, I'm going to get back to it. So I went to the office, turned on the camera and the mic, had something planned. And a recording that should have taken me, just the recording, little quick talk through of something that should have taken like 15 minutes, literally took me over an hour because I could not stop coughing. I'm talking about just this coughing fit would come over me for like 2, 3 minutes straight every time I tried to say something. It got to the point where I just need to go get my ass back home, get back in bed. Why am I even trying this? So I waited a couple more days and then I made a video yesterday, and that went well without me coughing up a lung every 2 minutes.
Was that the Wim Lua video?
No, that was actually, yeah, that was the, no, I'd recorded that, I think, before. getting sick. I think that was the last one. I think that was the day I didn't feel right. I'd have to go back and check the dates on them. But the ones I recorded this week haven't been published yet.
Oh, okay.
That was my week. We're here the last couple of weeks. Unfortunately, nothing interesting in the world of Linux or tech for me. So what have you guys been up to?
I've been working on Zero Linux. Other than that, nothing.
Yeah.
The college is in recess, so I'm in preventive maintenance mode there. I have to get a CT scan on my lung because they found a spot on my lung, so I get to figure out what's going on there, but I won't have that results until probably the 31st of August.
Hello.
I heard whoever that was. I don't know who that was.
Big Pod.
No, that was Max.
No,
That was Max.
Max.
Hello, guys.
Yeah, because
Oh,
Big Pod would never just ease in with a simple hello, right? That wasn't Big Pod. Yeah, we hear you, Max.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, great. All right,
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
we've got you.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Nice vineyards you got there.
Yeah, Big Pod in nature.
Yeah.
That's nice. You're enjoying the outdoors.
This is my time away from family right now.
You're on vacation?
No, but some family thing, and
No.
I needed some time away from them.
That's cool. Big Pod, what distribution are you running these days? We haven't talked about this lately.
These days I'm running NixOS and Ubuntu, depending on the machine.
You know what? I thought it was time for you to go ahead and ditch Ubuntu Mate and move to something else. I'm a little surprised you're on NixOS. What made you move to that?
I want to try it.
Yeah.
That's why I have it on my desktop. On my work laptop, I still have Ubuntu.
I know
And
the
it's
real
not
reason.
that well.
I know the real reason you're trying it.
Why?
Doesn't Martin Wimpress also maintain Mate for the NixOS team? Doesn't he package it up?
No.
He doesn't? I thought that was him.
No. Actually, I'm not using Mate because Mate doesn't work on NixOS.
It doesn't.
At least on my system, because I have a specific bug disease.
Well, if you and Martin get on it,
hardware.
y'all could work it out.
It's due to what's called Nvidia GPU, Nvidia driver. Specifically, Mate doesn't work, and everything else works except Mate.
I was actually thinking about bringing up the whole Nvidia is horrible on Linux issue one more time for this chat, but I'm glad Big Pod brought it up before I did, because I've just noticed, since I spent the last 9 or 10 days largely here at home, just sitting at a computer and can't do much but watch Netflix and YouTube and stuff like that. Screen tearing on Nvidia cards on Linux. Does anybody else?
I don't have any screen tearing.
I have more of it on this computer. I never have had a problem with my workstation at the office. It's got the AMD card. And I know I always talk about how Nvidia on Linux, the drivers suck, but they do.
I have to always.
That the screen tearing could be due to the compositor you're using, specific setting of the compositor, and it's not. It's the specific interaction between the compositor and the driver.
Well, for me, I'm using PyCom, but I do know Nvidia. There's always been a problem for KDE Plasma users. I don't use Plasma, but I know they complain a lot.
I'm using on when I was using Mate, Ubuntu Mate, I was using PyCom to actually get rid of
The screen
tearing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I could check out the settings we use and send them over your way.
Yeah.
I know Martin did a lot of work on that.
Yeah, I just have to. I use Mate, Ubuntu Mate, and I just have to check the Nvidia settings anytime it comes out of sleep mode, and or if I'm forget to do that and I'm using YouTube and or if I scroll in the browser, I'll notice the tear, and then I'll just go check my settings and the pipe. What I forget
Force
what
composition pipeline is
Yeah,
it called?
have to
Yeah,
enable.
That's
Yeah, I have to
happening.
enable that every time.
yeah. You need to enable that. I have made it so it actually is applied automatically through xconfig or xorg config file, but yeah, you need to force the composition pipeline.
Yeah.
How do you force it? I mean, I've saved my settings and
I've
it
saved
still
it, and
doesn't hold them.
I've saved
Well,
it.
did you run the Nvidia settings as a root user and
Yeah,
apply it so it
I do.
writes the okay?
I do. I do. Yep.
I don't know. It worked for me at
Well,
least.
it works for a lot of users, but some cards it just doesn't
Yeah,
stay for some reason.
I
Yeah,
think,
Like
yeah, it could
I
be
think
a
my
specific
issue,
video card issue too. I mean, yeah, depending on.
yeah.
I think my issue is the fact I use TVs as my monitors.
Ah,
that could be it.
It could be,
that could be it,
especially. Are you using a really big resolution?
But
Do they
just
have a slightly
1080p.
different rate, like a slightly different refreshing rate or something?
No, they're both
Just
the
in the
same.
commas. Okay.
No, they're both.
Disable all things on the TV, like smart smoothing and stuff like that. Disable all that. That's
Yeah.
that causes a lot of trouble for graphics cards in general.
I do want to
Yeah.
thank in the chat, Antonio sent a get well soon message. Appreciate that, Antonio. Thank you.
Whereas where Nvidia drivers are concerned, I'm using the TKG packaged ones, and from what he told me after I asked him what's the difference between yours and the regular drivers, he was like, the only difference being is they're enabled for the TKG kernel because he has his own custom kernel. They're customized so they work better with his kernel for users who use his kernel. But otherwise, they're the stock drivers found on the Arch mainline repositories. But I'm using them, and I'm using his kernel on top, and the best performance I've ever had out of my system. I've never had such a good experience with KDE until I used his kernel in combination with his NVIDIA drivers. So I count myself lucky.
Well, you couldn't have that good of experience with KDE in general because it's KDE and it's not that great.
Well, each desktop has its downsides and upsides. So far, the only issue that I still have is Windows not remembering which monitor to open on. That's an ongoing issue with KDE. I don't know when they're going to fix it, if ever. But other than that, it's snappier than it has ever been. We got it. We were able to get it down to 600 megabytes on cold boot of usage with only 100 processes in the background.
Guys, I just wanted to take a second to say something. Somebody in the chat was saying that my audio is much lower than yours, which hadn't been a problem before, but I did adjust the gain for me in OBS, so hopefully YouTube is hearing me a little bit better. As far as that problem with KDE Plasma not remembering which monitor you open Windows on, that's pretty much every desktop environment on Linux I've ever used. It was kind of flaky as far as where it remembered where windows were opened. A lot of it has to do with the fact that the window managers that are built into these desktop environments, they don't really treat monitors as workspaces the way like a tiling window manager does. They just treat it all as one big workspace. So I think that's part of why Plasma just kind of throws a window anywhere, because it's all the same workspace to Plasma, but it's not really.
Not really.
Yeah.
That really doesn't have anything to do with it because it knows which monitor it is. It's more that it don't actually remember which monitor it is.
It just doesn't remember. It knows which monitor it is, but it doesn't remember it.
They don't store that because for many people who use this software is not, or especially to those who develop, it's not that important.
Well,
And honestly, it does cause trouble because based on how it actually stores, because that's all in X, it actually stores relative location. And
Well,
Boy,
I would argue that the window manager is the most important part of any desktop environment. Like, that's the one thing that you have to get right before you even worry about anything else.
Yeah.
The solution I use is age-old solution in Windows 2 is I put the program over in the monitor I want and I resize it and then maximize it. And now when I start Discord, it automatically goes to the left screen.
Okay, some apps do, like Ferdium and Discord, they remember which monitor. For me, they remember which monitor they open on. It's on the left one. But console, for example, I open it, it opens on the right monitor the way I want it, where I want it to open. But the next window I open in console, because I open multiple windows, console windows, the next one I open opens on the left one.
Oh, wow.
Then it opens on the center one. But the first one always remembers where it needs to open, but the next windows I open, they go all over the place. So that's kind of annoying.
That's the reason is because they have to store relative to main monitor, and that then causes problems if you unplug the monitor. The relative will still remain, and you won't see that screen ever, that window ever again. That's why they don't do it, because since you store relative coordinates, if you unplug the screen and open that application, it will open in an empty space where there is no monitor, and you cannot get that window back unless you plug in the monitor, set it to exact same location, then you will get it back.
I have had this problem with certain applications, not just, it's not a window manager problem either, because I've had this with this particular application on multiple window managers, and that is GIMP. Sometimes I can open it up and it will open up at a really large size way off screen, like it's not on my monitor. Like I'll open D menu, I'll type GIMP, and I know it opened, but where's it at? Because it's not on any of my monitors, and I'll spot like this small little sliver of a window on like my third monitor that I can just barely grab, and then I can pull that big window to where it should actually be on the screen. And it's just weird. GIMP's the only one that doesn't do it all the time, but when it does it, it's frustrating because I can't find the damn window. I don't know where it went.
For me, it's console. It's only console. That's the only app that won't remember where it needs to open. Mm-hmm. Everything else, like Vivaldi, Jitsi, Discord, Ferdium, everything remembers where they need
Terminator.
To open.
Yeah. You could try different. I mean, there's 100 different terminal emulators, but of course you could try a different one and get the same problem. Or
if it were up to me, I would use Cool Retro Term.
You could do it like me. Just use one monitor, no Nvidia, and a tiling window manager. That's also an option. I'm kind of used to that.
Actually, you don't realize how many problems you discover when you go to multi-monitors that most people don't realize. Because I get people pushing stuff to like my GitLab. They'll get into some of my configs and some of my scripts, and you know what? I don't like the way you did this because it's kind of quirky on my machine, and they don't realize that I do some of the things I do in my configs because I have multi-monitors, and sometimes I have to do really hacky things to make things work the right way. Where if you're just on a single monitor system, you don't have to take some of this kind of stuff into account. And so sometimes I gotta just not accept some of these merge requests. I gotta, comment back to these people. I can see you're on a single monitor, and but trust me, I did this for a reason. So just leave it alone. Don't touch that line.
Yeah, like in the beginning of Zero Linux, I was building it considering that everybody only had a single monitor. And then I started getting complaints from users telling me, oh, I have 2 monitors or 3 monitors. The other monitors have a black screen. They don't have a wallpaper. Mm-hmm. Are they working? Are they not working? I was like, I cannot do much because some people have their extra monitors connected either via DP or HDMI or DVI or VGA. You cannot account for all this. There's no configuration file in KDE that tells which monitor is connected to which port. So I cannot apply all this. I apply it to my system. They're all connected via HDMI and DisplayPort, but it's not going to apply for everyone. Only the people who have their monitors connected to the same outputs I have will it work for them? So you have to battle these kind of things when maintaining a distro, and I have to explain it over and over again, but it's part of life.
Well, it's something that, I mean, people that aren't using multi-monitors, they really, I mean, they would have no idea that some of the bugs exist. I mean, I can understand why people, it's not something you'd ever think about if you didn't actually use them.
Yeah,
like I've got this weird bug. It's kind of a bug in Xmonad, but in Xmonad has the ability, you add this hook to it to where when you make a window full screen, it actually becomes full screen, covers the panel and everything like it should. No window decorations, no borders, right? And it works great if you're a single monitor user. But on a triple monitor setup like I have, I make that thing full screen and it looks great until I move the mouse focus to a different monitor because I'm working in a different monitor, and now that window no longer has focus. It adds the border back. And now that 1920 by 1080 movie that I had playing now has shrunk a couple of pixels on all four sides, and it looks real bad. And so I've actually created my own custom key binding to force a window to be full screen and not have a border. And it's a hacky kind of workaround rather than using the method that the Xmonad guys suggest. And people can't figure out why I have that hacky method in my Xmonad config. Why don't you just use the full screen hook? Trust me, when you plug in a second monitor, you'll figure out why I don't use that.
Well, that's the beauty of Linux. At least you can use hacky methods to fix things. Whereas with Windows, there are no other methods. Yeah. It's broken. It's broken. That's it.
I mean, it's Linux. Everything is held together by duct tape, right? That's all we do.
That's all we do. We duct tape everything together, but at least we have that option. In Windows, you don't even have the option to duct tape anything. It's broken. It's broken. Bye bye.
Duct tape is not allowed in Windows.
Yeah.
Unless you pay for it.
I wish they'd fix the edge grab. You know, when you go to grab the edge and it just sits there and flickers and you can't get it to stop, so you can grab the edge and expand your window. That's been there forever.
Yeah, I can agree with that, because just now when I was resizing all my windows to fit, the mouse would, as I'm dragging to resize the window, the mouse would skip and it's no longer resizing the window. It's resizing another window or doing something else. This has been there since I started using Linux, and I'm wondering, they don't. And I found a bug report for that, but it had so many replies, but no fixes. It's just people saying, "I second this, I second this, I second this, I second this."
And I was going to respond to Gaz in the chat says, if I make my border color black, I won't notice it as much as far as the border coming. Well, it changes the screen resolution, the picture resolution. Like if I'm playing a movie, it still has to add space for the border. It doesn't matter the color around it. It's not that the color of the border annoys me. It's the fact that it resized what should have been exactly 1920 by 1080. You know.
Yep.
That's sticky tape without the sticky end of it.
Yeah. So that's. It's not an OCD issue where I don't like that bright color of, you know, no, it shouldn't resize the window at all.
By the way, what was the latest movie you watched?
Oh, I mean, I was watching some mob movies this week on Netflix, like some old classics. I watched Goodfellas was on. I watched Donnie Brasco. I don't know if you guys... Probably everybody has seen those movies. Those are classics. I watched some Forged in Fire. You guys ever watch that series where they make knives? I know nothing about metalworking, but it's just fun to watch these guys. Some of the challenges they throw out to these guys, because they have to make a knife in like 3 hours, which is crazy. They give them like a block of steel. Here you go. And it's impossible. You know, they can't really... Half of them don't even finish, or they turn in something that is just complete garbage. But it's funny, and it makes me laugh, so I watch it.
I watched... I'm going over the classic Star Trek movies. The first six.
I was
ones that count.
I saw them all. Heck, I saw most of them in the theaters. So I'm going to date myself a little bit. But
now I'm watching them. I'm watching them while after I had watched Trek Culture. Trek Culture is this YouTube channel that comments on all the everything related to Star Trek and all the continuity issues and stuff that shouldn't be there. Now I'm watching them, noticing all the issues, all the mistakes, all the stuff, and it's really annoying.
Yeah, the Star Trek films really made the original series so much more popular than it was when it was actually on TV, oddly enough. Because that really got people interested in the original series again, which then got people interested in, hey, let's make a new series, and that's The Next Generation.
And
was hugely popular.
Try to watch them in 4K.
Mm-hmm.
The remasters in 4K, amazing. They redid everything. There are some effects that look too fake. They fixed all that. Really, really nice. And it shows how there's a connection between Strange New Worlds, the new one, the new TV show, and the original series.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
Matter of fact, if you
to watch them.
We were talking about Netflix stuff to watch on Netflix. William Shatner hosts a series on Netflix called The Unexplained.
Yep.
It's about weird stuff like ancient civilizations and cryptid monsters, like Yeti and Sasquatch and things like that. Anyway, it's an interesting little series, but William Shatner's a funny guy.
Anything William Shatner does for some reason fails, like Tech War the game failed. He directed Star Trek V, the one with where they have to go meet God, failed. Everything he does fails. I don't know. He's not good for some reason.
If you want to see a funny Shatner, watch him on Mike Tyson's Hot Boxing.
Yeah.
Oh, him and Mike. Whoa, it was intense.
I would like to watch that one.
Well, Mike and Bill Shatner, they're both intense guys anyway, so it's gotta.
Yeah, and the latest movie I watched as a standalone movie was Top Gun Maverick.
No, I haven't seen that yet.
I've been watching the Fantastic Beasts series. I'm gonna watch the Grindelwald. Well, I mean the Dumbledore one this coming week.
Yeah, I don't watch that.
In the chat, Leviticus is wanting to know if Stefan uses the Kitty terminal. I don't know why he's asking you that, Stefan, but...
Well, I prefer Alacrity because it works with ligatures and nerd fonts, and it's better, but yeah.
I thought Kitty had built-in ligatures. I'm pretty sure it does.
Or does it in the meanwhile?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Kitty that
Or I had some font rendering issue with.
Now font rendering, I've heard people complain about font rendering in Kitty. Really, it's weird when you ask people about terminal emulators, because anytime you bring up, hey, what terminal emulator you're using, why do you like it, yada yada, immediately you start having people post about how they hate the main dev of Kitty. They don't even talk about the terminal emulator. They just talk about, I went to the GitHub and this guy said this and it was mean to me. He did that. And it's a shame that sometimes the main devs of projects, sometimes their personality overshadows what a great piece of software sometimes these people put out, because they don't realize, if any conversation about your software always starts off about how terrible the lead of the project is, that's not a good sign.
Like when you did the terminal emulators that you created, that you started putting in categories, good, bad, worst, and stuff like that. I like the fact that you added console in the good.
Yeah.
So
it is a good terminal
emulator.
Yeah. And I just want to put it out there in case anybody in the chat is thinking I have something against the main dev of Kitty. I don't know the guy. I've never interacted with him, never been on the GitHub. This is just what people on the internet, I see it constantly. I don't know if any of it's true or not, but I just find it weird that any conversation about the Kitty terminal always becomes something personal. This was always the case with Lennart Pottering too, with Pulse Audio and System D. Anytime you bring it up, people have always wanted to bring up Lennart Pottering and what a horrible person he was. And I was like, what's that got to do with Pulse Audio? If it's good or bad or not? You're talking about the guy that created it.
They want any excuse to talk about him.
Yeah. Well, you can't talk about him now because he's working for Microsoft.
True.
Yeah. Apparently, it kind of leaked out that he had left. Was he working for Red Hat? He's now got a job working at Microsoft. Good for him. I hope he's getting paid.
He's still gonna continue working on his projects. But...
Oh, I'm sure Microsoft actually hired him because of his Linux open source stuff. Yeah, I mean, they didn't hire him to work like on the NT kernel or something. You know, they want him for what he was already working on anyway, right? Because they've got the Windows subsystem for Linux and Azure and all this other stuff that, you know, they could use Lennart to help with some of that stuff.
What do you think about there's a rumor that I heard quite a while back, but I heard a rumor that Microsoft might start forking the Linux kernel to use some code of it in their own kernel. So basically, it's going to be a hybrid of Microsoft NT kernel and Linux stuff in it. And
I don't know. But I've always thought that now that Microsoft is warming up to Linux and open source software, they would eventually realize that they could save a lot of work by not developing their own kernel when there's free ones out there, like the Linux kernel especially. Since it's got so much in it already. It's like all the heavy lifting's been done, you know. You just...
Well, speaking of which, you know how there's this File Explorer on Windows. There's a version that's open source called Files.
Mm-hmm.
This one, they took the code from this one and they're gonna implement it in Windows 12. In 2025.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like Apple doing the Apple thing when where they take jailbroken apps and they make them themselves, jailbreak apps and they make them themselves. That's what Microsoft is kind of doing with Files.
Well, I know they had open sourced some of their other stuff. They open sourced like a calculator, 3-4 years ago, which was nice, but I mean, it's a calculator. We've got 100 open source calculators. Thanks, Microsoft, for adding to the pile. And they open sourced a terminal emulator. Yeah, we don't have any of those. Thanks. Can you actually open source, I don't know, Office? No, they're never going to do that. Right? They're never going to do
No. They even made Windows 365. Now you can pay a subscription to use Windows on somebody else's machine.
Yep.
Well, in their respect, you gotta say that the WSL2, I do have to work in some contexts with Windows machines and Azure services. It does work, and it works okay, which is fair. But yeah, I still had the issue that also came up in the chat that Windows does mess with your boot records, especially if you have them on the same install. So keeping each OS on a different hard drive is usually good practice too.
Yeah.
And I joke about them, you know, open sourcing Office. I know they'll never do that because right now, I mean, that's their big money maker, right? Where does Microsoft make their trillions off of, right? Those Office subscriptions. I mean, they can't mess with that. Not right now. Once it's no longer making money for them, then yeah, we'll open source it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm still wondering why in university, for instance, we had to use Microsoft services like as default option, and nobody actually cared for free and open source here. So they just paid Microsoft, and it was crappy. And,
that's normal.
That's the thing. When here, for example, at least as far as Lebanon is concerned, you go to a university, you're doing 3D courses. You're learning how to create 3D and studying 3D. And they give you a project to work on at home, but they don't give you a license to the software. So where are you supposed to get that multi-$1,000 piece of software?
You got to pay for it.
Yeah, sure. I had the same in statistics class where we actually had to pay for the IBM's SPPS statistics, social or
SPSS.
SPSS, and
Yeah.
well, I had to fight with my professor to actually use PSPP, which is the free and open source version, which does exactly the same. It just wasn't in his standard requirements. But yeah, sorry,
That's
not
weird.
gonna buy even a $50 license as a student.
But you also have to understand, like university professors that have been around forever, they've been around before open source software was really a thing, as far as where it was actually seen as a viable alternative. Like they're from that generation, that Bill Gates kind of generation, where proprietary software was just better because you paid for it, so it has to be better, right? A lot of people had that mentality back then, and some of them still have that mentality. Is if you didn't pay for it, it's worthless.
Like
I still can find some the feature in PowerPoint where you can put some random pictures and it generates like a slide for you, which looks good. I still can find it in open source software.
Yeah.
This is the only thing that bothers me, and
yeah, I mean, one of the things with Microsoft Office is it does all the Office suite programs, the individual programs, Word, Excel, the presentation program. We have open source alternatives to them, but none of them are 100% compatible with all of the features that are in Microsoft Office, and that is always going to be that's always been the biggest sticking point with people moving from Windows to Linux, is the fact that friggin' Office, doesn't work on Linux. Like there's not a good Linux version of it.
They're trying, but in the case of 3D, for example, a friend of mine was learning how to create landscapes, and the software they were using was called Lumion. And Lumion is $45,000 for a full license. $45,000. So there's no alternative, open source alternative for that at all.
I mean, ultimately, that's why the entire free software movement started. With Richard Stallman in the late 70s, early 80s, is because some of those machines that they were working on at MIT, he couldn't change the software. Some of the software cost literally tens of thousands of dollars, and then when you bought it, you weren't allowed to actually do what you wanted to with it. And that was the whole thing. I was like, no, if I buy it, it's mine. Well, you had to rethink the whole idea of software licensing at that point, because that was just unheard of. It's like, no, you can buy it, but it's not yours. It's it's Microsoft's, or it's Apple's. It is still our software. We're just loaning it to you for this hefty price of.
Some universities are starting to open up to open source software these days, but other universities, they just lend you a student license, which you can own the duration of your of the studying at the university. Once you're done, the license expires immediately.
No, but if as an alumni you get an offer to, like, since Microsoft is expecting them to get a well-paid job to continue your subscription, you also had a file storage, cloud storage included, manage all your documents, private data in the OneDrive, and just continue on your way ahead. That's I don't know.
Well, a lot of I don't know how it's done these days. When I was at university, though, I mean, we had computer labs that had all of this expensive software that was paid for and installed on the individual machines, and everybody, you just shared these computers. You went to the lab, you got on the machine, and
but when you went home, you no longer had access to that.
Right. You had to sign up for time at the lab because there's only so many machines, right?
You had to sign in, and you only had 60 minutes. Right. After that, somebody else's turn and stuff like that. It was annoying. But the open source here, there's one university, and it so happens to be the Lebanese American University. that's starting to adopt open source software. So I was happy to see that, at least.
Well, it's changing. I think the next generation of educators, they're the ones that you'll see a drastic difference. They're not going to be pushing a lot of the old school proprietary stuff, not on students anyway.
Yeah.
They may mention it as far as, hey, it's out there, out in the workplace, enterprise. Hey, a lot of people are going to use Microsoft Office. I'm not making you pay for it for this class. Install LibreOffice. Right.
Well, you said LibreOffice, but here for some reason they prefer the Oracle one. It's called OpenOffice.
No.
At least they're going open source, but as to which Office suite they're using, it's OpenOffice Oracle.
Yeah, but OpenOffice sees almost no development since the split happened, like 12 years ago. It was a long time ago.
No, and the nice thing about OpenOffice is a portable version for Windows.
Yeah, well, there's no development because they're still like updating and they're maintaining their post.
Well, there's no development because literally everyone that was working on OpenOffice went and started working on LibreOffice, because it's
better.
Issue.
Yeah.
Well, you get into licensing issues. It changes hands. It's going to become proprietary software. Where the people that work on free and open source software, they're never going to work on anything that's proprietary. So literally every single person that worked on OpenOffice, immediately the next day, they forked it and created LibreOffice, and they just kept going. OpenOffice has essentially been dead ever since that day. Now, a lot of people still install OpenOffice because they do a Google search about open source office suites, and OpenOffice still comes up because back in the day it was the one to install. But
open source,
and unfortunately, people still get these old articles, these old search results on the internet, and they still install OpenOffice. But yeah, you shouldn't be running that thing.
Did you notice? Speaking of office suites, did you notice lately a lot of content creators are being sponsored by OnlyOffice and advertising it like crazy?
No, I hadn't noticed, but I don't watch a whole lot of Linux content on YouTube, so.
Like Nick from the Linux Experiment, he did a sponsored video for them. Tech Hut created a whole section of his video, like 10 minutes, dedicated to OnlyOffice.
Yeah.
I was really surprised. That's proprietary. That's not open.
Yeah, I mean, you would have to catch a certain segment of the Linux space because OnlyOffice, is it free? I think
not really.
It's not really. I know there's one out there, FreeOffice, which actually has free in the name. FreeOffice is absolutely proprietary, which is I find hilarious. You named it FreeOffice. But yeah, I don't know OnlyOffice. I've never used it, so.
OnlyOffice is like you can use basic features for free, and then if you want to use the rest of them, you have to pay for a license.
Okay.
So it's kind of weird how they're advertising it. It's how Manjaro is semi-rolling.
If the software is licensed under a free license, if they have some paid subscription service to unlock something on the web, I mean, I don't know if that would really violate.
No, they don't have a.
I mean,
they don't have a proprietary document format in which that you.
Oh well, yeah, no, I don't like that.
They don't have that.
No, I don't like.
They don't have it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would never use anything that has a proprietary document format because then you're really locked into that thing because who else is going to support that format?
And what's with Office Suite trying to mimic exactly pixel for pixel the look of Microsoft Office?
I don't know.
That's weird. I'm just like, make it your own. Why copy somebody else?
In the chat, it says, I thought OnlyOffice, you had to buy their server space to use it. Yeah, that's probably what it is. The subscription service
cloud.
Where, it's tied to the web in some way, and you have to sign up. But technically, your desktop client that you're installing, free software.
Yeah. But
you just can't do everything with it from that free software.
If you want to hear something funny, I got Photoshop to launch on Linux, the latest version, but that's as far as I reached. It opens and then it freezes. But
Photoshop can never work on Linux because of the whatever mechanism they use to check for licensing, for subscriptions. It's just not compatible with Linux at all. So all the Creative Cloud stuff, you're wasting your time even trying it on Linux.
I tried it via Bottles because they said Bottles is so awesome and whatever. I was messing around and saying
Bottles is awesome, but there's limitations. I mean, there's just some software that literally will never work on Linux. There's nothing we can do about it. Adobe has to make that work on Linux. And right now,
well, and there's some software that I have to use for my industry that can't even run on Mac, let alone Linux, because of it's so tied into the ecosystem of the Windows programming language.
The Adobe stuff is kind of like the games that have weird anti-cheat systems that are not Linux compatible. That's kind of what Adobe has going on with checking for its licensing and things.
I think Adobe are doing the same thing as Epic Games. So the story is they won't let Fortnite on Linux because Linux kernel has too many options that you can change, and you can use hacks without detecting, without the anti-cheat detecting the hacks because of Linux kernel.
Yeah, they're afraid that the 1% of people that are the Linux users that would use Fortnite, they're all hackers, right?
Yeah,
that's what we are.
Yeah.
That is not the but Linux has come a long way from the gaming perspective. But I just watched Bryant video, Gardner Bryant, about the Steam Deck. Okay, so the hype is dying down around the Steam Deck, so less and less significant updates are taking place. They're updating Steam side, but the desktop environment they're ignoring. Like Firefox, because it's part of the immutable file system, it's 6 months out of date.
Yeah.
So it's got all this vulnerability still in there. Everything is still in there, and Chris Titus Tech just made a video unlocking the system, and I am under the impression that he doesn't realize that after a major system update, all those changes that he's telling users to do to their system are going to get undone. He's ignoring that fact, or he missed that memo or something. I don't know, but he's customizing the desktop environment. But that's all going to go away.
Well, yeah, I mean, if all those config files just get overwritten with the next update, then.
But isn't SteamOS based on Arch? Sorry, this is for.
Yeah, SteamOS is based on Arch.
KDE,
yeah, so it should be rolling.
It is, but it's different. They've got their own thing going on. It's based on Arch, but it's not really Arch.
Yeah, it's immutable like Fedora.
Yeah, exactly.
Fedora,
they've locked it down, so not much changes because they don't want people obviously breaking their Steam Deck.
They only give you 5 gigabytes of storage to mess with.
Right.
They only give you 5 gigabytes. Your home partition is only 5 gigabytes.
Oh, this stupid.
Yeah, so they don't want the user to mess with the desktop environment. They want the user to use it as is. Just use your flat packs and whatever, but don't touch the system. Don't do anything that will be overridden. That's why they're using immutable.
Right.
It's hard to break, yet they give you the key to unlock the system and break it. They shouldn't give you the key.
Well, Valve has to.
Have you got root permissions?
Yeah.
Oh, but then what is the problem?
Well, the average user that breaks stuff. It's the average gamer kid that goes on Google and types the first command line option.
When I say it's locked down, I mean people that know what they're doing, like everyone here. I mean, we can hack the system in such a way.
Yeah.
We can do whatever we want, but they want to make sure that you have to jump through some hoops so you don't hit some buttons on the Steam Deck and you change something that could break something. You know, they've got it.
You can install. You can go as for experienced users like all of us here. we can go as far as installing our own custom distro, for example, any distro we want.
You could wipe it out and install
Yeah.
Windows if you were crazy.
No, we're not that suicidal.
I mean,
we're not that suicidal. I was considering installing Zero Linux on top of it. It's just a desktop computer.
I mean, I hope you would have just had like a 3-day tequila bender if you decided to install Windows on your Steam Deck. I would hope you were drunk when you did that. If you were sober, then wow.
Yeah. So there's a video on YouTube where someone installed Holo ISO on the Steam Deck, but Holo ISO is a fork of the Steam OS. So, but this one is unlocked. This one doesn't come immutable or anything. That's a full-fledged operating system. So I was like, okay, if he could do that, I could either install Fedora Nobara project by Glorious Eggroll on the Steam Deck, which would be awesome because everything is tailor-made for gaming on that distro. Or I can install my own distro, Zero Linux, on that thing. And I can use it as a desktop, install Steam and whatever launchers I want and be about my day. But for me, the Steam Deck, when I was happy when the Steam Deck got released, because to me, the Steam Deck is a retro gaming console, nothing more. With a desktop with a desktop on the side, but mainly a retro gaming handheld. I was really waiting for someone known, a big company, to make one, because all those Chinese companies, I bought many of those. They were not great, especially that the ones that are coming out are running Windows. I don't want Windows. So and now Neo are going to release their own Linux fork of their handheld. Then they're going to be forking SteamOS on it, their own version of SteamOS. And they signed with Valve and everything. They took all the okay from Valve. So now the market is opening up. So Linux gaming is gonna be on another level, and in the next couple of years, it's gonna be on par with Windows. I feel.
I hope it goes well.
And one thing, since we were kind of talking about the slow updates, security feature, one thing I did a couple of weeks back, I made a video because I found this news story and I thought this was amazing about this company that ended up losing $540 million because one of their employees opened a PDF on one of their machines.
Yep.
That was the guy. I feel bad for him because I guess he worked at this large cryptocurrency company. They make it. They're making like game technology that's based on blockchain. The smart guy. You're probably in high demand for jobs, and he got this job offer that just sounded great. So he going back and forth between the scammer until finally he got an email with a crazy job offer. Here's the document. Read it. Sign it. Well, let me open the PDF attachment. That's how they got in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just thought this was, this is the world we live in, right? Everything's a scam. Everything you open up on the internet's a scam.
Yeah, and those guys were smart because they were preying on.
These guys were pros. They were a known hacking group. That's what they.
It's bear fishing.
They knew who to target.
Oh yeah. They knew who had deep pockets. Yeah, I mean this took several months of planning by several people.
Yeah.
I had this happen in the wild as well, and I promise you guys, there were a couple of meetings with a couple of guys and girls, all with their head turned red and I don't know, weird stuff happening, and about $50,000 loss that took 3 months of delay to get rid of it. So it's real and it's out in the wild. And this accumulated technical debt is hitting hard now, especially in the InfoSec.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that's still weird that email's never been secure. It was designed well before the web was a thing, email. So security was never thought of when email was created, this protocol. So that's part of the problem, but also, the fact that we can send attachments, and there's certain file formats that really you should just, I never will open a PDF in an email. I will never open a docx in an email. I will never open a spreadsheet file in an email program, because I know that they have macros in them. And depending on what that person wanted to do with that code that they inserted, it could be bad. So,
well, let me tell you something related to exactly what you're saying. My brother is a white hat hacker. Used to be a white hat hacker. White hat hackers are, for those who are uninitiated, they're just security researchers.
right. Penetration testing is what they
Penetration testing,
right.
yeah.
Ethical.
Ethical hacking.
Right.
So, and he wanted to play a prank on me because he had learned something new. He sent me my own picture via an attachment. Because Gmail, it shows you a thumbnail of a picture, or it shows you the image in the email if it's an image. So it showed me it's my picture. I was like, oh, it's my picture. I clicked on it. What happened? He got my Wi-Fi password.
Yeah. Like
my Wi-Fi password was returned to him, and I had a keylogger on my system.
It's social engineering, 50% of it.
Yeah, social engineering is the bottom. That's the most massive hacking that they don't even try to stop, but it's the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if it had something malicious, I would have expected Gmail to detect it and to reject the attachment. But apparently, even Google don't have that kind of sophisticated checks in place.
Like an average vulnerability stays 2.5 years out in the wild until it becomes a 0 day.
Now, to be fair, the only reason you opened this because you knew who it was from. If you just got some random email with a random attachment,
oh yeah,
you'd have never opened the thing anyway.
No,
so.
I just delete those. Whenever I see an attachment from somebody I don't know, I just immediately delete. I don't even open the email.
How many people do use some outdated Microsoft Outlook clients that do not care about emails without DMARC signature and SPF? I see this on a daily basis.
And I, having jobs in the past where I had to use a lot of Microsoft products like Outlook, and sometimes I was worried about opening some of this stuff. That's why I kept Windows VMs around. I still have a Windows 10 VM around, just in case if I want to do something, I want to make sure I don't care what happens to this virtual machine, right? Yeah. I'll open it there, because what are they going to do? Break my virtual machine? Well, I'll spin up another one.
Well, I still get emails from addresses at hotmail.com. So when I see at hotmail.com, I immediately delete, because that is a dead service and has been dead for ages. So
yeah.
Well, you can still use the domain name.
Like a letter.
When you sign up for email accounts with Microsoft, I believe, since they still own the Hotmail domain, you can still get an address at Hotmail.
Yeah, same with Apple. You can still get at iCloud and at Mail.
So I wouldn't just label it as something scammy. It could be a legit person that just chose that domain for their,
or a person that had that email for ages and didn't bother changing it. Yeah, but I still, when I see Hotmail, I'll just delete. If it's important, they would resend it. So, but yeah, I look at the email addresses, who it's coming from. But in Gmail, when you hover the mouse over the email, it shows you who it's from.
And always check for signatures. Check for.
I don't open the email. I just hover, so I avoid opening the email, because sometimes by opening the email, it would tell the hacker at the other end that you opened the email, and it gives them information.
I just look at the source code. I look at the source code through Thunderbird. I mean, I don't preview any emails, and if I see one, I pretty obviously sketchy. I look through the source code, and I just laugh.
I just installed the Thunderbird Flatpak. I wanted to try it because it changed. It's no longer what it used to be. Now it has a new user interface and whatnot. I installed the Flatpak, and I'm liking it. So it's better than Mailspring for now.
Really, nobody has a legit use case for email anymore, except for work. A lot of office places still require you to have
attachments. You have attachments for work.
Why hasn't mainstream, the workforce out there, realized that you can actually sign your emails, and that you can encrypt your emails, that you can have a key lock your emails. Like if it's just for your sphere of workers, your employees, why can't you just have everybody use PGP keys
Yes, ma'am.
or whatever?
Yes,
You know,
It's
just
extra steps.
Well,
That's the easiest.
Yeah.
It's extra steps. That's the easiest answer. That's the most simple.
It's hard to use. That's the main issue, and
Yeah.
it is. It's
key servers are mainly broken nowadays.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And I beg to differ. I still use email for open source stuff. So if it's not on GitHub, you have people on mailing lists and stuff. So you need mail.
RSS feeds are better for me.
Yeah.
Like when I was working for Apple, we were only allowed to use Mail, Apple Mail, because they had encryption keys for each employee machine. But that came at a very high cost. You send the email, it would take literally 5 to 10 minutes to reach the other end. It's never instantaneous because of the encryption and decryption and all that stuff.
It should be now with a modern Ellipse encryption.
Well, we have all of these new. We have all these new fancy web protocols now. People are trying to come up with something better than HTTPS now. And there's so many of these that are never going to take off. But has anybody ever really tried to make a new email protocol? Something better than the old system? I can't think of, off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody having tried that.
We're still using IMAP and POP3.
Right. We're still using the same old, tired technology that's broken. Yeah.
Yeah. They're working on things to better things that are less important than the important stuff like email. Like people still use email in the workforce. Believe me when I tell you, there are still people around the globe, not only here, around the globe that still use telex and faxes.
Yep. You have to go to Germany.
I like faxes.
Germany is famous for its bureaucusy with fax machines.
Yeah, I love faxing. And don't
but telex.
Man, come on.
But imagine some people are still using those punch rolls.
Yeah, it's wire. Yeah, it's hard wire. It's bare metal.
Yeah, and it cannot be traced. It cannot be hacked.
There was always something about, back in the day, you go to the office and they had that gigantic Xerox machine that cost about as much as most people's house. And then just sending that fax was so liberating. And so, I don't know. I miss that old technology.
Yeah.
The fax machine that took up like half a room, right? Just to send a piece of paper.
the companies I saw faxes in, they were printing color faxes.
Yeah.
I was like, that's new. I never seen that in my life. But why are they still using faxes? We're way beyond that.
Matter of fact,
apparently they still do.
From a company standpoint, I wonder how Xerox is doing these days. I hadn't even when I brought up that name, I was like, Xerox, that's a blast from the past. What do they make? Are they still making fax machines?
Yeah, they make
photocopiers
machines. Yeah.
Photocopiers, printers.
The ones that carry all different size papers and all that.
Yeah.
But regarding Xerox, I can highly recommend David Kriesel, which is a German security researcher who figured out that Xerox actually failed pretty hard with a bug that kept exchanging characters on Xerox machines worldwide in scans. I can highly recommend to read his blog about that. Xerox is a pretty big company who had a pretty vengeful bug that kept exchanging characters and even touched Obama's scanned long version of the birth certificate that kept bringing up rumors. So Xerox was involved in that, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's not so much a name anymore. Probably for the better.
Well, when I say Zero Linux, everybody compares me to Xerox.
You know what? Yeah, your name is close, right?
Yeah, minus the other X on the other end, but yeah. But still, Telex, we had an office back in the 80s My dad had an office and a telex machine. We still have it in storage, but that's what I thought all people did. They were storing those the telex machines in cold storage, but apparently there are still people using it because this is very hard to hack, really hard to hack. So there are secret messages being still. This is still being used in the underground because you cannot source anything, you cannot hack it, you cannot. So it's interesting to see. But the interesting part was the telex software they were using to send those messages runs on Linux. So somebody forked it on the AUR.
But Linux isn't stable.
You'll find a lot of really, really old stuff actually in the AUR. You'll be surprised what you'll find in the AUR.
Yeah, like I was telling Brody during the interview that we did, I have a 2006 G15 keyboard that was replaced with another G15 after a few years after that.
You found the driver?
The Windows driver doesn't work. It only supports the new one. It doesn't support the old one. But someone forked it, and it's on the AUR.
You'll find a lot of old drivers that are no longer like in the main repositories for Arch. Some people want to keep that stuff alive. They'll package it themselves.
I got lucky. Now I have new life for that keyboard on Linux. I love seeing my resource usage like HTOP on the small screen of my keyboard.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot you can find on there's a new thing for Fedora, or not new, but I just discovered something called Copper, which is Fedora's AUR. Yep. But apparently it's way slower than the AUR, and it's worse than the AUR. It still needs a lot of work.
In the chat, I wanted to respond to Tails Orange. He says he tried installing OpenBox, and then he uninstalled all his existing desktop environments, and he ended up with a black screen and a TTY. Okay. When you installed OpenBox, you probably shouldn't have uninstalled all of your existing stuff until you knew OpenBox was working. I'm just throwing that out there. That's pro tip for the future. Yeah. Make sure it works before you delete everything else. If you're not being launched into OpenBox, then you're using StartX or you're using a login manager, make sure that you have a X sessions file for OpenBox. So it'll appear in your login manager as an option. I think OpenBox creates one automatically. I don't think it's something you have to do. But
by the way, Derek, have you encountered, no, not encountered, but have you watched any of Eric's latest videos? Like, for example, he was testing ATT on Zero Linux, the latest one.
Yeah.
For some reason, the Latte dock was starting on all desktop environments and window managers, although they shouldn't share the same config folder.
If Latte dock, if the way it's being auto started is with a file in .config/auto start, that works on every desktop environment or window manager, or almost. Oh. There's some that don't accept it. So
yeah, Awesome, for example, doesn't take it. Awesome does not launch it.
Yeah, but Xmonad will. I know Xmonad will take everything that's in that .config/auto start folder and launch it, because it respects the standard where Awesome does it.
We cannot figure out a way to stop it from starting, because if you delete it from the auto start folder, it's gonna die on KDE, and KDE uses the panel and the dock.
So how you would have to do this, if you didn't want everything to always start on every window manager, you would have to add things to start up specifically within that window manager. Like in Awesome, you can actually add these hooks in Awesome. Say, when Awesome launches, start this, start that, yada, yada, yada. And then you take all that out of .config. Before you'd have to do that with every window manager, including Plasma. But Plasma should have a way to auto.
There is a line input. There is a line we can add to the .desktop file that says show only in equals KDE. But that's not being honored. We tried it. It's not being honored. It's still starting on everything. So we need to figure out, either Eric has to add something to all the packages of all the desktop environments and window managers to kill Latte.
Well, what you could do is the .desktop file that starts your window manager or your or your desktop environment. when you choose it at the login manager, it's what gets executed. Like if you choose awesome, the .desktop file basically says execute awesome. You could actually point that execute to your own custom script and then have that script launch
Kill Latte.
or kill Latte, or just launch everything that you actually want to be hard-coded to launch. And that way, it's no longer a problem. You just do that for every window manager. Just have all of them have the execute line be a certain script for each window manager or desktop environment. That way.
So he has to do it on his side, not
I
me.
think you can even call it like with a --config flag in the startup. So you point to a certain config.
Yeah, true. So he has to do things on his end. On my end, I have to do nothing. But speaking of Latte, did you hear that Latte is rest in pieces?
Yeah, that's not surprising. And I'll tell you why it's not surprising. I find it unfortunate that so many people, when they get into developing software for Linux, they get excited, they want to start a project, and then they build their project. But basically, they start something that has heavy dependencies on something else. So these people that start working on these fantastic GNOME extensions that literally stop working in 2 months, and then they get frustrated that it's so hard to keep working on something because they're not part of GNOME. GNOME's going to keep changing things that break the stuff they were working on. Same thing with working on these peripherals that for Plasma, like the Latte dock. And recently we had the Termite maintainer, Termite Terminal, who quit because he got tired of having to fight using the GNOME VTE library, which is the virtual terminal widget library that GNOME Terminal uses. But it's open source software. Anybody can use it, so he thought he'd use it for Termite. But for years, he was having issues trying to work with the GNOME team for features that he needed and things like that. But he couldn't actually get them pushed to VTE because the GNOME team wanted to go their direction. And, he had, it's just one of those things. Yeah, it's not surprising. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I'm part of those people you're mentioning, because Zero Linux heavily relies on Latte dock because it's the top panel and the dock. So if it dies, if it stops working, but the best part of Linux is with a single update, I can push something that will completely replace those two with let's say the XFCE panel and the dock and the KDE panel on top. It's just that it's so Linux is flexible, but it's unfortunate that things have to die that way.
Yeah.
What I decided to do in the case of Zero Linux is to keep using Latte until it stops working. Once it stops working, in the meantime, I will figure out a certain configuration that works that I could replace that with.
I mean, there's other standalone docks that are not so tied to a specific window manager or desktop environment, and you could try.
Yeah. There's at least 5 or 6 that I have on top of my head.
I mean, there's one
the NG one, the one that looks like a circle, half a circle at the bottom.
Yeah, there's
that one's nice.
The simple one a lot of people use is Plank, and then there's the fancier one that's been around at least since I started using Linux. Cairo Dock, is that still?
Yeah,
around?
that's the one.
Yeah,
that's the one. Cairo Dock.
It's got all the fancy.
Cairo Dock doesn't rely on anything; it's its own thing, but it's super resource intensive.
It is, because it can practically be its own desktop environment.
Yeah.
Right. You install a window manager, a standalone window manager. You just launch Cairo Dock, and that's essentially your panel. And
it's up to us to keep it simple. Yeah, it's up to us to keep it simple. We either use all the fancy effects it comes with, or we just keep it simple. So, yeah, there's a lot of things. I'm not worried. It's just him being Greek, he's giving us Greeks a bad image.
Username says Plank is trash. Is it? I haven't really used it.
It's very simple. It's very simple. It's just a PNG on the back for the background, and that's it.
Yeah.
What you got, Ben?
Hey, Derek, I use Plank, and I have never had any complaints about it, to be honest.
It's very simple. It's not very customizable.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a dock. It's got some quick launchers, and I mean, what else?
That's it.
Yeah.
What do you need?
I don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah, it's keep it simple. It's not bad. It's just keeping it simple, following the KISS standard.
Philosophy. Yeah.
It's usable, but I might switch to it because it's. But then
Isn't
again,
Plank what
because,
elementary? Doesn't elementary use Plank?
yeah, but their dock is highly tied to their enlightenment.
It's a fork. They probably
Yeah.
changed a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So for Plank, I would not use it for the simple reason that it's tied to the XFCE window manager.
Is it? I wasn't aware of that.
It's a part of the XFCE WM4. It's a GTK based app. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Let's just leave it at that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want something that's unattached, like you said, Derek. Something that's not tied to anything. It's its own thing. That way and Cairo Dock has been there for at least 20 years.
Yeah.
So I might switch to this one instead. But it's unfortunate to see good things die because Latte Dock was still considered number one for the QT environment.
Yeah.
What
Yeah,
to
I
do?
mean, if you wanted a dock that is a QT app, that's your only option, right? I mean, I
Shameful.
can't think of anything else. Yeah.
Even KDE developers adopted it as part of their own under their own umbrella. So yeah, that was really unfortunate to see. But well, we move on. Things die. We move on.
Yeah. I mean, there's
Don't get attached to anything.
Yeah.
With Linux,
That's like
I call Linux full of moving parts. It's constantly going to change.
Yeah.
Constantly, things are going to die. Other things are going to replace them.
Yeah.
You got to know that coming into Linux. Like yesterday, I had a user on Discord coming to use Zero Linux, and he doesn't even know what a bootable USB was.
in the
And-
chat. Run with the Dolphin. He's correcting us. Plank is GTK, but it's not tied to XFC. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I didn't think it was
Yeah.
part.
yeah, it's not tied to one specific desktop. No.
Yeah, Run with the Dolphin, great guy. You guys check out his
Yeah.
YouTube channel. Of course, he helps
He's the
develop
maintainer of
MX
MX
Linux.
isn't he?
So
Yeah, so I was saying that this guy came without knowing what a bootable USB is, and then and he asked me where can I find Zero Linux. I pointed him to the website,
Mhm.
and he says, "Okay, I see the ISO, but where can I find the Windows 10 Pro files for Zero Linux?" I was like, "What?" He doesn't know what Linux is. He thought it was a fork of Windows.
oh wow.
Oh, good gosh.
So I told him no need to. I told him something along the lines of, what did I tell him? There's no need to jump directly into deeper waters before learning how to swim. Take it slow. Test in a VM. Jump in only when you feel confident enough.
Oh.
Yeah. So this is the motto I'm following now. So yeah.
Well, I've mentioned before on my GitLab, I get questions about Windows and Mac sometimes, and I don't get it because literally everything on my GitLab is Linux stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, why are these people running these non-Linux operating systems? Like,
Yeah.
how did you even get here? Like, where did you even
That was
find
my first question. That was my first question, and guess what his answer was? I saw you on DT's video.
Really?
I was like, you're watching DT,
And he's a Windows user.
Linux,
You know, and his
you think it's Windows.
You know what? You would be surprised. Oh, I got disconnected.
Okay.
Oh, Lord.
All right, I got disconnected for some reason.
Power is gone.
Yep. Yep.
I've never had that. It actually kicked me out.
Oh, Jitsi is now turning off video to save bandwidth.
Oh, shoot.
Well,
Messages. Whoa.
yeah, checking my analytics, you'd be surprised. I have a very large percentage of people that watch my content that are Windows users because, you know, it tracks the operating
That's
system.
Derek.
Maybe they are coming from LTT.
Well, I've actually had people actually leave comments. Hey, I don't understand half your content, but I enjoy it. I watch it. I run Windows. I don't plan on switching to Linux, but keep doing what you're doing. Like,
We have
okay.
music
Well,
with
yeah.
Windows.
Right. You'd be surprised the people you get that watch your videos. You'll think you'll have one kind of audience, and you get all kinds of stuff as far as demographics.
Derek, I need to talk to you about something real quick.
Mhm.
So, I don't know how good of help you'll be on this, but I have a Lenovo I'm sitting on here. It's a gaming AMD computer. And the problem with it is that it has an AMD GPU in it inbuilt and an Nvidia. And the problem is that, it's a really wonky piece of hardware, And the problem is that Lenovo by default set it to run by default on Nvidia only. And the only two options I have in the BIOS are the Nvidia and then GPU switching. So I don't know which to best set it on to run under Linux, because you know as well as I do that Nvidia by default is a pain in the behind. And I'm wondering what I should do about running Linux on this, because I've tried it before and running it by default on only Nvidia is awful. Because
so you have two external cards, or is the AMD on the CPU?
No, one is on the CPU, which is just the AMD, and then the other one is the discrete NVIDIA. Now, like I said in the BIOS, you can have either GPU switching or discrete, which is just NVIDIA. So I don't know if there's like a tool that you can recommend to have the switching, or I should just run it just off NVIDIA. Now, the problem with running it just off NVIDIA is...
Well, I'll be honest. I've had a few computers that had AMD CPU with, integrated graphics and an NVIDIA card. But I have never actually tried to use the AMD graphics if it had an NVIDIA card, because, the reason I would have purchased that machine would be to use the NVIDIA card. So I've never actually tried to go the other way.
Right. So you're suggesting I just run it just NVIDIA?
Well, if you've got the NVIDIA card, it'll be a much better experience than the onboard AMD graphics. Right. But if you wanted the AMD graphics, though, you could just disconnect the NVIDIA card, and then you wouldn't even have to worry about it.
The problem is that in the BIOS you only have GPU switching or just NVIDIA.
Well, if the NVIDIA card's not there, it would have no choice but to use.
Right. Well, I'm not sure what the solution would be, because, if I have it just NVIDIA, I'm afraid that the power management's going to suffer. That's what I'm kind of...
I wouldn't think. I would actually think wouldn't the onboard graphics use a lot less power?
It should, yes, but like I said, the NVIDIA is by itself when you just run it.
This Lenovo machine that had the NVIDIA card in it, like I said, it's going to be much better than the onboard AMD graphics.
Then I'll just do that. Yeah. Now, another thing I wanted to ask about was writing my own custom awesome setup, because I tried my buddy Meshi's that we worked with that one time, and it's okay, but it's not entirely what I want. I want to set up my own custom thing, and I was wondering your advice on that.
Well, you just go find other people's dot files, you take what you like from it, you throw away what you don't like. That's a starting point.
I was actually wanting to make my own from scratch is what I'm wanting to do.
Well, that's making your own from scratch. It just saves you on the typing when you copy blocks of code.
I get you.
So
you're suggesting that I take his or something like that and just trim it down to what I only want.
Right. Well, you're going to have to edit stuff, because you're not going to use, for example, like if you went and got my config as an example, and you see all of my key bindings, you're not going to use all of my key bindings. You're going to use your own key bindings. So even though you copied it, you're going to have to change everything. You're not going to change everything, but you're going to change the commands and the key bindings, but it'll give you the code that you otherwise would have had to go look up. Right. So it saves you on some work, but still you're going to have to put in the work to actually make your own customizations,
What I might do is either use Meshi's and trim it down, or just use the Arco Awesome setup, one of the two.
I would start with something really, really basic if you were starting from scratch. Start with something really as small as possible, and then gradually add what you need, because if you start with something really complicated, That's hard to wrap your head around.
Like Eric's awesome. That might be a little bit bloated. Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of those are pretty long files. I know people have problems with my Xmonad config because my Xmonad config is like 1,200 lines long or something crazy, which is insane. If you don't know Haskell, you're not going to read all of that and understand what's going on.
Well, I don't know a lot about the Lua language, but I know enough to edit awesome somewhat.
I don't know much about Lua. I learned enough to where I could config awesome because that's basically what I know about Lua. I know enough. I know how to set a variable, how to assign a variable, and I know that the 2 dots in Lua is actually concatenation because I never could figure. No other language uses 2 dots for concatenating. They use plus, but not 2 dots.
Yeah. Well, what I'll do is I'll probably just use the Nvidia if I run something non-Ubuntu or something like that.
Yeah.
What about?
And then what I'll do is I'll probably just use the Arco Awesome or Meshes or something like that. Yeah.
For the Nvidia program, what about just not having Nvidia drivers and the card just won't run?
What was that, Max?
Don't use Nvidia drivers.
Just uninstall the Nvidia drivers, but
remove them.
Yeah, but
I mean, the Nvidia drivers and using Nuvu is not ideal for gaming because this is a gaming computer. So
then why run it on the?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not going to use the proprietary drivers at that point, just take the card out. I mean,
it's a laptop. You can't take the Nvidia portion out of it. Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Desolder it.
Yeah, desoldering.
Yep.
Well, nobody in my family knows how to desolder a graphics card.
You don't want to do that because you could screw something up and then he'd blame us. Well, they told me to get in there with the soldering iron.
Yeah, we're not going down that road.
Or you can use green with NV or NV control to disable it.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
Yeah, there's a user, part of Zero Linux chat that wrote an article, an extensive article on how to configure NVIDIA on laptops. Yeah.
What was that, Derek? What was that, Zero?
There's a guy, Aaron. You know Aaron?
Yes, I know him.
Yeah.
Aaron wrote an article on the Zero forums on how to configure dual graphics on the board.
Yeah, but his is an Intel setup.
Yeah.
Intel. Well, same thing. Same thing. It's just you're disabling NVIDIA. It's the same thing.
I think that Optimus Manager should do the job, but
not for all systems. Apparently, on his specific ASUS system, Optimus is not running. So you had to use NV control instead.
Yeah, I might try NV control on my system, see what that does.
Yeah, it works. It works really easy. Just one command, and it will completely kill. And there's a video attached to the forum thread on how to completely blacklist NVIDIA.
Right.
It's just blacklisting it from anything related to NVIDIA will not run in the background, or the laptop will consider it as non-existent.
Cool. Yeah, I might try that.
This is one way of doing it. He's done a lot of research. He did a great job on that. So
yeah,
I decided to switch from Nvidia to AMD as soon as I have a few bucks in pocket. I'm switching to AMD. My issue with AMD is there is no control panel to configure the driver. But
I wish I had not bought an Nvidia card when I bought this computer for home, but it was during COVID lockdown, and then prices were through the roof. You were having problems getting graphics cards. I waited for 3 months for this computer because of shortage of parts, and finally I was able to get an Nvidia 3060. I just went with it. It wasn't what I wanted. I wanted an AMD card, but all the AMD cards, you couldn't find one at the time, or you couldn't find one that didn't cost 3 times as much as what it was really worth. And I hate it now because, again, graphics on this computer are so different than at the office. Every time I update this machine, it's like the driver broken.
Oh yeah, Nvidia is such a pain in Linux.
Derek, Are you able to hibernate or suspend with that card? Because I got a 3070 and I am not
Yeah.
able to hibernate nor suspend this
Oh,
machine.
Stefan, that is such a pain in the ass. I tell you, I have a 2060 in this laptop,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
The
it's
same
like,
thing.
Yeah, same for me. I'm sitting there. I've been reading through those unit manuals with all the system power control, with the system D services. I've read through all of it, and it just does not work. Okay, so I'm not missing something. So if you
No.
say
Yeah.
it's a bit behind, yeah.
Mine suspends and everything okay. It's just, I mean, the system shuts down and suspends, but it doesn't. I have to check the NVIDIA settings every time I open it back up, but otherwise it's rock solid as far as going into hibernation and everything. But that I don't have a laptop, so
No, I'm working on a desktop PC as well, but yeah, maybe if I update the kernel, it breaks.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I
I'm running at
I agree with Stefan. I agree with Stefan because I could not get hibernation to work correctly. It would go into hibernation, but good luck getting it to wake up. I have to hard shut down and turn it back on.
Yeah,
It's
so
always
no
been that way.
TTY, nothing, just black screen.
Yeah, just black screen. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's
Hard
the
shut
annoying
down
part of
and,
it.
and reboot. It will work, but
Yeah,
it doesn't work.
Well,
I have
then
a
I'm really
1080,
happy.
so- I have a 1080. I'm older than you guys, and still it doesn't work on the 1080. So it's a general NVIDIA thing, not only. But
New are better supported than the old
I
one.
never understood why hibernation exists. It's not useful for me, at least. I don't know. I never use it.
hibernation is very tricky. It's you have to finagle some stuff in the BIOS, and it works. It works once, and then when you update the kernel, some patches in the kernel cause it to go back to crazy again. It's a touch and go thing with Nvidia. But on my older system with the Nvidia 650 Ti boost from MSI, it hibernates just fine. It just hibernates. It's running Manjaro, but it's not a distribution issue. It's just this card goes into hibernation very well. 90% of other cards, you either works once and stops working, or it doesn't work from the get-go.
I want to.
Old laptop hibernation worked just fine, but I never used it because, well, I can. If I'm gonna hibernate, I most likely will not use the laptop for a few hours. Then I just shut it down. I don't care about those.
Yeah,
5
my
seconds
laptops, I never bother hibernating. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not on it long enough to. Like
but there's the issue with not hibernation, standby. Sometimes it doesn't go in. The screen shut down. You think the system went onto standby, but it didn't. It's just the screens that shut down. But the card will not. And when you try to reboot the computer, it takes a while to reboot the computer because the Nvidia services are causing System D to hang while it's rebooting or shutting down. Because Nvidia, being Nvidia, it has so many things attached to System D.
I was
think the only
considering
difference-
reinstalling, but I don't know.
The only difference that I have between you guys and the fact that mine works is I shut off my screens since they're televisions. So they're already shut off.
Yeah.
So it's going into sleep and hibernation when the screens are already off. So I don't know if that's
no, because
Signal should be there from the cable.
there is no signal will still be coming out because it doesn't actually tell the graphics card there is anything, that there is no signal, especially if you're using HDMI. We doesn't have any kind of support for that.
There's no ping back.
Which is what TV support. DisplayPort has that kind of support because when you shut it off, you actually, especially on Windows, see that actually screen disappears from the system. Where on HDMI, it's all on the side of the computer. When you plug in the cable, it knows there is something there.
Right.
Yeah, correct.
Now, I wanted to respond to some questions here. Hold on just a second. I had some people in the chat asking some stuff. a while back, Tails Orange was asking what window manager is best for a new user. If you're talking tiling window managers, i3 is okay as far as a beginner one. Change the key bindings because they have some horrible key bindings. JKL semicolon. Change that to HJKL like a normal user. But other than that, it's pretty easy to get into. Awesome window manager is a good one to start with because out of the box, you can just use it. You don't need to know anything about it. Somebody was asking about the Brave browser for Arch Linux. It's in the AUR and it is available as a binary. It doesn't have to compile. It installs in seconds. So just install brave-bin.
Or as a Flatpak.
It has a flat pack, and of course that'll work on all distributions.
I personally recommend using a snap of Firefox.
Snap of Firefox.
My favorite.
Firefox is in the standard repos though. But you know what? I'll let it go for now. And then somebody was asking DT which one is better, Paru or Yay for an AUR helper. Paru, Yay, use what they're practically the same.
The same maintainer for both. It's the same
and
for both.
Personally, I would go with Aura, which is AUR main AUR helper written in Haskell because of the meme. So Aura, AURA, look for it. And there's a binary for it in the AUR as well. If you don't want to compile.
I had so much issues with Aura when I used it.
You had some issues.
I never could compile stuff from the AOR.
Get the binary. That's why I was specifically mentioning grab the binary. It will compile, but it's one of those things. If it's you have to also
You have to read the manual from the Glasgow Haskell compiler there. Yeah.
Well, I have so much Haskell stuff on my system. I'm constantly getting Haskell updates anyway. But if things are out of sync, then you'll have issues with
language. Don't use it. I don't like it.
Haskell's the greatest, Big Pod.
No, it's not.
I mean, it's no JavaScript. We know how you love JavaScript.
Problem with Haskell is that it's functional language. Functional languages.
That's a feature. That's a feature, not a bug.
Yeah, I agree. You have to think in advance before writing. That's the thing.
You have to think about things that you have no need to think about in reality when programming.
It makes you think.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
That's why I think with
It makes you work harder, huh?
proper languages.
So Perl is the best, right?
No.
Wow, Perl was replaced by Python like 20 years ago. Like it's kind of like
I'm just teasing.
I mean, Perl, I'm sure, is a great language, but it's nowadays it seems like Perl is kind of relegated to the neckbeards, like the old Unix people from way back in the day. They still use Perl because that's what they used. But now nobody new is learning Perl, right? That's not.
Why would you learn Perl?
Now you wouldn't because
I had it on a IRC channel. It was a trivia program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Perl was the way you extended your Unix-like operating system back in the day when you needed something better than shell scripting. You did everything with Perl, and now we've got so many other options.
Useful programming language and I'm sad to say this, Python.
Yeah, Python is definitely like the language on Linux now. If you want to script something, you just use Python.
There is a guy, I don't know if you know him, Luke Smith. He says that Python is really bad.
Python is really bad. But it's still better.
It's really slow.
It can be slow if you use it for the wrong things. It's not slow if you use it the right way.
Python is a glue language, so what that means is you should use libraries that are written in other languages like C and C++.
Yeah, a lot of what Python does is actually C under the hood, which means a lot of people that complain that Python is slow. A lot of what it's doing is really just C code.
Yeah.
I mean,
the math in Python
you don't.
is NumPy.
Yeah, I mean,
C language based library.
Si, senor.
But for what most people do with scripting, small jobs, Python's not slow at all. You never like if you're avoiding Python because somebody told you it was slow and you haven't actually tried to use it, you're just taking somebody's word for it. Hey, you can take that guy's word for it, but there's a reason why everybody uses Python. There's
reality. What most people do,
right?
Python won't slow you down one bit.
Right, exactly.
Everything happens so fast that where it will actually hurt you if you're using it in a high frequency environment where you run many amount of code, and
If you have to
needs
crunch,
to happen as fast as possible.
if you have to crunch really big numbers, large amounts of, that's where Python completely fails.
That's why I use NumPy, and that's
but that's not what people do with Python. I mean, like, you would have chosen a different language for something like that anyway.
No, that's what is used.
Are you talking about NumPy?
You use NumPy, and that's it.
Yeah, but that's
It's a
C.
library.
That's really C code, NumPy. It's not.
But using Python.
Yeah, you're using Python. It's glued together. That's kind of like you said. It's a glue language. You're using. That library is really C at the end of the day that's executing,
Yeah.
C in Python.
So what should I spend time learning? C or Python?
Haskell.
Now, Python's worth learning if for a first.
Forget C.
Yeah. For a first programming language, Python is good because it will teach you a lot about programming, and it won't completely fry your brain like if you tried to learn C as a first language or God forbid Haskell. You wanted to go the functional route. Don't start with a functional language. Python's great.
Start learning functional language. Don't ever start learning pure functional language.
Yeah, but eventually people are going to want to get into Haskell and all. The Lisp languages. They have some functional aspects to them too. That that's really when you get into like the beauty of programming. Once you learn Lisp, that's really when you've reached nirvana.
The best languages are multi-paradigm languages.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Those are languages that take the best out of every paradigm.
Well, you really are talking about JavaScript then.
No, not JavaScript. JavaScript is insane. I'm talking about C#.
C#.
Okay.
Here we go.
C# is 75% of C when it comes to speed.
This section of the chat is sponsored by Microsoft.
It's sponsored by .NET community.
Yeah, you're right. It's not really a Microsoft project anymore. Kind of like Rust isn't really a Mozilla project anymore. It's like the people that start it, at some point they take on a life of their own.
Oh, by the way, Linux Mint 21 Vanessa is out.
Yeah, I saw that this morning.
Oh. And it's the code name of Linux Mint is the first name of my cousin.
Yeah. I was actually I got up early this morning. I'm on my second cup of coffee. My first cup of coffee this morning was reading the release announcements for the Linux Mint releases to see if there was anything interesting. And I was really shocked at how short the release announcement for the Cinnamon Linux Mint is. It's like, hey, we got a new release. What's changed? We swapped out one Bluetooth application for another that's in the repository. Like that's what they lead with. Like, wow.
well, let's not make fun of that because ZeroNix upcoming release is going to have a 2-line changelog.
Yeah.
And it's been 3 months between releases.
Of course, that leads to the question: do you really need new features if what's working for you is working?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's the point. You don't need major features to call it a release. It's a lot of under the hood fixes. It doesn't have to be a feature to be called a release. So yeah, I've been working on Zero Linux for the better part of a month and a half now, just ironing out all the issues that were there in the previous release. Mm-hmm. So it's not about having features. The only new real feature that's going to be part of the next release is the new welcome tool. That's it.
And in the chat, the Linux guy Nepal asks, "What does Vanessa mean? Is it the addition?" It's a code name. A lot of software releases, they'll give you a new version number, obviously, but then they'll usually also give it a cool name. It's a code name. That way you don't have to refer to Linux Mint, 21.1 or whatever the release number. You can just call it Vanessa. Hey, I'm running Vanessa. Like the Ubuntu guys, I'm running Bionic Beaver or whatever the hell that release was a few years back. Bionic Beaver. That was the greatest name ever.
I for one opted not to use any versioning or code names. If you want to know what version what build number you're running, just type ISO in the terminal and you'll get it. So I'm against all the complexities and things that users have to remember. I like to make users' lives easier. I'm just running zero Linux. Which build? ISO. Okay, it was built on that date. Okay, I know what to fix.
And somebody in the chat was saying, yeah, Ubuntu likes the weird names. Well, no, the weirdest name ever was Fedora about 10 years ago, released one, and their code name was Beefy Miracle.
What?
Beefy Miracle.
BP Miracle?
Beefy Miracle.
What's
What
that?
the hell? What kind of code name is that?
It sounded like it might have been like a chili dog, you know. I don't know. Hot dog with some chili and cheese, maybe some onions and mustard. I don't know. Beefy Miracle. Maybe a hamburger. I don't. It was a weird name though.
Okay, so that's what they're doing nowadays. Well, yeah. I'm gonna be working on a new project for myself. That's never gonna be shown online. Trying to fork the Zero Linux settings to the Pi 4. I really want to do that. I just need an Arch. If any of you know, please point me to an image, a ready-made image, pre-built image that all I have to do is flash on an SD card or an SSD on the Pi 4 to use, which uses Arch and KDE, but vanilla KDE.
Oh, see, I was going to recommend Manjaro ARM, but
yeah, Manjaro ARM is Manjaro. I don't have access to the Arch repository.
Right. Base with ARM Arch and deploy.
Yeah, I tried to build I tried to build it because they have on Arch Linux ARM on their website. You get the image, but you have to do follow a convoluted guide to get it running. I tried it; it kept failing for me. So I need something that I can just flash on an SD card. I was thinking about Endeavor, but Endeavor is a custom distro. I don't want to mess with custom distros. I just want vanilla KDE with Arch as a base, ARM, of course. But I need to, because I'm working on creating an ARM.
You could try NixOS.
To be honest, yeah. Or go something a bit more normal, like Ubuntu Debian.
Oh, no Debian, please. No Debian. I want Arch.
I mean, you could, I guess, use... Yeah, I guess you could use Debian. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't want Debian.
You're combining annoying with annoying, aka ARM with Arch.
True. A lot of people recommended Debian because, especially on the Pi 4, everything for the Pi, you find more stuff for the Pi 4 on Debian repos rather than on Arch.
Yeah, because everybody is using that Debian distro on the Pi. What is it? Raspbian or whatever? Like
yeah.
That's what I use on one of my Pis. I've got Manjaro ARM on one. I've got Raspbian on another.
There's a YouTuber, but who goes by the name.
So,
did we lose
related videos? He's got a Debian image with Plasma that runs really smoothly and can play 1080p videos on the Pi 4. But it's a custom distro. I'm trying to run away from custom distros.
A quick distro watch search shows me Parabola GNU /Linux Libre.
No, you don't want a Linux Libre distribution. Yeah, that's
Parabola base is also an Arch in the end. So you end up using Arch or one of its forks. If you want to really go vanilla, it's sad as it is. I know it from 32-bit Linux.
Yeah, here's the distribution that showed up. I don't know.
Wouldn't you just install
Parabola? Oh yeah, Parabola is Arch, but without the proprietary stuff.
Right, it's one of the free software foundation approved.
Foundation.
Good luck getting that thing to work.
To nothing. Yeah. Basically, you have access to nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I love the Free Software Foundation. I'm a member. I support free software. I have never gotten a FSF approved distro to run on any of my equipment right. I've installed a few, and I've got them installed, but I've never gotten them to run right where they actually worked. So.
It's kind of like the KOS. For example, this distro KOS is really hard set on using nothing but Qt applications on their repositories and on the distro. They're Qt based. They don't run anything but Qt apps.
Right.
This is like targeting one thing and one thing only. They're not really spreading your wings. This is not wrong to do, but it's very limiting.
Well, the problem is immediately somebody's going to install, or some other, and then they're, hey, why is the theming not right? And these guys, well, they didn't think about that.
Like for Flatpaks, one of the major reasons users didn't use Flatpaks is because theming was not right. It wouldn't use the system theme.
Right.
But somebody did the research and posted it on the Manjaro forum, and I emphasized on that. I fixed the guide as well. With a single command, you can get all the Flatpaks to use the system theme, no problem. Well,
ironically, Windows looks a lot more cohesive with not having a system theme. All it does, it gives cues about whether it's light or dark theme, and that's it.
Yeah.
And it looks a lot more cohesive because every application can do things their own way. And it just looks more cohesive than on Linux, where if you have Qt-based environment, Qt will look great. On the other hand, GTK will look absolute trash.
Yeah, I mean, it's Windows for the win, right? That's.
Went out. Sorry.
That's fine. Well, we're coming up on the end of the 2 hours, and we've got a pretty good group here. So let's have everybody take a minute and give us a last word. So, Stefan, I don't know if he stepped away. Got his kitty ears on. You want to say anything about the kitty terminal or anything else on our way out?
Well, thanks for the nice compliments regarding my ears. I thought it's time to make video calls fun again, and especially with my appearance, the joke works great. So I'm happy maybe some people had a good and joyful laughter.
If you'd have sent out a memo, we would have all wore cat ears for this one.
I mean, if you're daring enough, you can. I will be happy to see you soon again, and thanks for the chat. And appreciate hanging out with you.
All right. Thanks, Stephen. Yep, Dad. Give us the last word, sir.
Blatant plug, Ice Giant Cooler. Check it out.
What's that?
Ice Giant Cooler.
Ice Giant. Okay.
Yeah, they have one version that's aluminum based on the for the CPU. They're creating a copper based one.
Okay.
And it's a really large cooler, but it uses pro-siphon technology.
Well, I see this thing. This thing looks huge. Yeah, when they say giant, they're not lying. That is a large.
I've got it on my computer.
As far as I know, it can only work when it's going. Yeah, it's. I forgot the word in English. Sorry. It can only work in one. Yeah.
Yeah, very rarely does it kick into high mode. I mean,
yeah, looking at this thing, I don't think you'd want it in high mode because it'd probably sound like a jet engine if it ever got up to speed.
Not as bad as you would think it would. Yeah.
Oh. All right. Anything else for us, Hip Dad?
I'll try to find some kitty ears.
All right. Thanks for hanging out with us, sir. Max, give us the last word.
Nvidia, fuck you.
All right, Linus. Of course, that's the cool Linus, not the other Linus.
Yeah.
Linus, not Linus.
Linus, yeah.
He doesn't care.
Self-hosting is hard.
All right. Well, thanks for hanging out with us. George, are you there?
I am. Thanks for having this again, and good to see everybody. And from the way it seems lately, we're getting closer to Edge OS.
Edge OS. Big Pod's favorite browser. Edge is not that bad. If it was licensed under a free license, I'd like it a lot more, though.
Me too.
Brave.
Yeah, Brave, right? All right.
Can I have next last word because I have to go now?
Yeah, Big Pod, give us a last word.
I have a more technology point. Everybody check out overlay networks and things like Tailscale, Nebula, and stuff like that. You're gonna open a new world of networking you never saw before.
All right. Thanks for hanging out with us, Big Pod, and hopefully he enjoys his time with the family at whatever event he was at there. And who else have we got? Let's see. What order were we in? We just did George. Andreas.
Okay, I'm a first timer here.
All right.
I just want to mention that Linux got great because it was supporting many architectures. And I was a little bit feeling it's just 64-bit nowadays. And I'm still maintaining a little bit of 32-bit world and trying to keep it alive and things like this here. So you can reach me on the forums. So if you have a very old machine and you want to run newest Linux on it, so be my guest.
Yeah, I've got some old floppies here that I keep around for nostalgia reasons. I've got some old floppies of WordPerfect from decades ago that I don't know if I'd ever even install it or play with it anymore, but I can't let it go. I loved WordPerfect back in the day, but it was way before Microsoft Office was the standard, right? WordPerfect was what everybody used.
Or Lotus 123.
Lotus 123 back in the day. You can actually install both Lotus 123 and Corel WordPerfect on Linux now because somebody acted in such a way that you can actually get those old versions running on Linux if you wanted to. I don't know why, but hey.
You mean not using a DOSBox?
Yeah. All right. Dark Zero, give us the last word, sir.
All right. Flatpaks.
Flatpak. That's the last word?
Yep.
You.
Won't tell us his real thoughts about flatpaks. He's leaving it up there for interpretation. Flatpak.
Flatpaks.
Although we were here for the pre-show, so those of us that were here for the pre-show, we know what his real thoughts on flatpaks are. And let me tell you, it ain't good. All right.
Open mind, flatpaks.
Nitro, give us the last word. Hey.
I'm a first timer also here, and I enjoyed listening to you guys. I didn't have much to say, so I'm enjoying. I enjoyed listening to you. And regards from Saudi Arabia, and US Arch, by the way.
Very cool. Well, thanks for hanging out, and I mean, if you want to chime in on these, some of these guys are very talkative. Just interrupt them. Otherwise, you're never gonna get it. Any silence.
Anyway, so
also in this Jitsi chat, they have a really cool feature where you can actually raise a hand and let everybody know you want to speak. Where is that functionality? It's on the window itself. I forget where that's at. Oh, it's at the bottom. I see the little hand. Yeah. If I raise mine, let's see. There we go. I don't know how this thing works, but it has a feature where you can raise your hand, and of course we should all recognize that if that happens. But thanks for hanging out with us, and of course, before I go, I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me on camera. There were a few people that were also on camera earlier that jumped off. I want to thank each and every one of them. I also want to thank everybody in the YouTube chat because we had some good questions and comments in there as well. And I also need to show some of the names of the patrons that couldn't be here. I will apologize. This list of patron names here is not up to date. This is the same list from when I did this live stream last month because I could not go to the office to get the updated list because I've been sick. So Once I get over COVID and get back to the office, I'll maybe next time make sure I actually update this list at home. I actually just need to sync the list. That way it's the same on both my computers. But anyway, that's it for me. Peace, guys, and say bye to YouTube. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. See y'all later.
JavaScript.
Bye bye.